Much discussion about health promotion issues revolves around health promoting environments, and this lecture is about specifically one particular environment, and that is the environment that is the common understanding by the general public as the natural physical environment that we're surrounded by, and the impact that it might have on health in general. Now, the aims of this particular session are to firstly investigate a little bit the environmental determinants of health, what is referred to as the human nature connection, the role of nature, so that environment, that physical environment, as a determinant of health, and also then, because we are talking about environmental issues, we're talking about sustainability and how that might relate to health. So, if we look at two different aspects of environmental determinants of health. Firstly, this process of environmental degradation that we see around us every day. So that includes factors such as contaminated water, problems with sanitation, air pollution, vector-borne disease. So vector-borne disease, for example, a vector is like a mosquito is a vector for malaria infection or dengue fever. Rats are a vector for plague, as we've seen in one of the previous lectures. And then there's another aspect of environment and health, the relationship between environment and health, and that is the absence of contact with the natural environment in some way can also undermine human health. So there is some evidence, although it's not of a particularly high, what should we say, high level of evidence, but there is some evidence that in fact humans have some sort of dependence and they're quite cognizant of the environment around them. And the psychology or the psychological aspect of health is particularly at play here. So there's some um, uh, tendency towards what's called biophilia. So humans really require some sort of interaction with nature. Um, and there is a recognition through biodiversity, biodiversity, that it's becoming more and more well understood that biodiversity actually is quite important for human survival. And the general way of thinking is that this loss of contact with nature causes a few things. It causes mental fatigue. Um, it can sort of contribute to depression or depressogenic tendencies, which often have the impact of making people feel like they have less energy or raises the level of stress in people. So if you'll recall that very important definition of health that has three aspects to it: physical, mental, and social well-being. Physical or biological health, contact with nature has been shown to have effects on immune function and also cardiovascular function, psychological response to stress, and also various physiological effects. Now, for example, stress has a range of different impacts on the body. There's a whole range of cytokines which are produced in response to stress, and they can have a great number of impacts, including inflammation. And inflammation, as you probably are aware, can have an impact on, say, coronary heart disease risk. So you can see that there are biological connections between contact with nature and health outcomes. If we look at that second aspect of health, mental health, so it's been seen that contact with nature can actually have a therapeutic impact on somebody with attention and hyperactivity disorder, can improve mental performance and also can restore concentration. So these are three effects of how nature can impact with the body. And then, of course, there's the social health, which is probably the most well understood um, interaction between the natural environment and health. So through the sense of community, and we saw last session, how important community factors are in health promotion, a sense of belonging, and also this interesting term, social capital, which is a major asset of any community or society, social capital. And these are very important aspects of health which are affected by interaction with the natural environment. If we think about a more therapeutic context for interactions between environment and health, so we're talking about a therapeutic rather than the preventive paradigm, therapeutic. There are studies which show that patients with a contact with nature have better outcomes. And also, there have been some studies looking at, say, wilderness interactions or wilderness experiences and as a therapy. And when it comes down to it, it's interactions with the natural environment invariably involve either contact with plants or animals. And a particular interest, a research interest of mine is looking at the effect of gardening, so community gardening on health. And you can see from this slide here, there's a range of evidence. There's a range of evidence which points to health benefits of community gardening, from physical fitness, so getting out and digging in the garden, improved food security, so being able to produce your own food. Community gardens are a social activity. You can develop all sorts of skills in community gardening, from learning how to grow plants, to permaculture, to actually learning how community organizations work. It can be quite a stress-relieving activity to get out and have an interaction with plants, something you can have some sort of control over. And of course, developing self-confidence and personal fulfillments by actually planting something, looking after it, and reaping the rewards in terms of food. So there are a range of sets of evidence which are becoming quite substantial, actually, which point to benefits of community gardening in terms of a range of health outcomes. The next few slides describe a case study looking at the impact of natural environments on quality of life in residents in a high-rise development in an inner-city location. And they specifically relate to green spaces, blue spaces, so water, and also companion animals. Basically, the study was conducted in inner-city dwellings in Melbourne and in Sydney, and it was essentially a qualitative research technique, so relying largely on interviews with people, structured interviews with people about their views on life and what affects their life. And essentially it used a range of photos of particular natural environment scenes to ascertain people's views about the effects of these factors on quality of life. So it was actually quite a nice sample size, over 200. Basically, there are 4 groups of people, subjects, dependent on whether they're owners or renters, and whether they were public housing tenants, and also if they had good access to these natural environments compared to poor access. And basically, the results that were determined, what was key was the safe and easy accessibility to parks and gardens. So it's not only the fact that the gardens were actually there, it's just that the residents could safely and easily access the gardens. And often this is an issue in health promotion, that people may have um, services available, whatever those services are. A person might be here and the services need to be here, but if there's a barrier in between them and whatever service we're talking about, then they don't have proper access. So what was key in this study was that the access needs to be safe and it needs to be straightforward, easy. And one of the quotes here is, "The gardens are beautiful, I think, because it's such a bad area, everything is vandalized and the gardens are portioned off." So that was an example where this barrier was actually quite substantial, and people were afraid to go there. Home ownership is emerged as an issue, and that's seen to be an issue related to self-determination and self-efficacy in terms of being able to access a natural environment. If indeed you have a home that's actually near the natural environment, and you have better access to it. But houses and dwellings can actually be designed to enhance access and therefore enhance the healthfulness of a particular dwelling. So, for example, we looked at the health benefits of community gardens. Well, in fact, there are now residential developments that actually have community gardens and also rooftop gardens built in, so that even though you might have a building with a number of floors, and in environments where there are a lot of these buildings, the green space is actually quite compromised. But if, for example, you have trees that are and gardens that are actually constructed on the top of these buildings, so that adds opportunities to access the natural environment for people living in these buildings. So that can have health outcomes as well. What people particularly value is this aesthetic value, so that rather than seeing concrete everywhere, if you can actually see nature in the guise of particularly plants and trees, that adds to the psychosocial aspects of people's lives. And also, if there are opportunities to even capture a little bit of nature amongst the concrete jungle, that actually enhances the healthfulness of a particular environment. So if we're looking to the future in terms of how to change concrete jungles into places that are actually healthful for high density living, they need to be well managed urban environments, and environment is a key word. But the emphasis now is on maintaining an ecological footprint in any development, so that we can decrease the impact on the environment and enhance the health of the residents. And this introduces us to this term of sustainable, in terms of minimizing environmental dangers and environmental damage, but also in terms of actually enhancing health through actual better contact with the natural environment. So this is an important emerging direction for health promotion.